I used to think that matching energy was, I used to think that was maturity. I used to believe that meeting people where they met me, I thought that was strength. You know, if they pull back, I pull back. If they give little, I give little. If they were inconsistent, I adjusted my expectations, I adjusted my actions. I thought it was balance. I thought I was the arc. I have that balance is the arc. Meeting them when they meet you, that's the arc. That's the way it is. But it wasn't, right? It wasn't. It was compensating. I was compensating. And the wild part is I didn't realize how much it was costing me until I stopped. And what did compensating actually look like for me? Like, how did it show up in my life? It looked like constantly adjusting myself. I wasn't I wasn't stable. I wasn't steady. I was constantly adjusting, you know. I wasn't calm. I was very dysregulated. I was managing reactions. I wasn't grounded. I wasn't grounded in myself. I was responding. I was responding to them. I was paying attention to how someone was showing up. It's how they show up that makes me decide how I want to show up. I showed up based on how they showed up for me. And when you actually mirror people, what you're really doing is, you know, what I was really doing personally. I was lowering my emotional expression so that I don't overwhelm them. I was withdrawing consistency so that I wouldn't look too eager. I wouldn't look like, I really wanted it. I didn't want to look eager. I was softening my standards so that I don't lose access. I was reducing effort so I don't appear invested. You don't want to look like I'm invested in this. It felt like it was strategy. It felt like, oh, that's the way, that's the strategy. But it was actually self-protection. I was protecting myself. And the protection is this. If I stay balanced with them, I won't lose them. I won't lose access. Why was I operating like this? I was gentle with myself when I asked myself this question. Very gentle. When I used to mirror, I was asking myself, what was I afraid would happen if I didn't? If I didn't meet this person where they are, where they're meeting me, what was I afraid that would happen, right? Was it rejection? Was it being too much? Was it losing the connection? If I'm being honest, which I am right now, I was afraid of being too much. I was also afraid of losing the connection. I was like, if I was too much, I'll lose this connection. I didn't want to be too much. I didn't want to lose the connection. So I thought to myself, if I stayed balanced with people, if I met them where they met me, if I didn't do too much, if I didn't expect too much, if I didn't show too much, then I'd keep the connection. But what I didn't realize was that I was slowly leaving myself on the process. And what did that cost me? What did that actually cost me? I realized I wasn't calm. You know, I was constantly adjusting. I was staying in spaces that I didn't feel aligned. And I was thinking it was maturity. I was being mature. Like, that's the adult thing to do. I thought I was being patient. I thought I was being understanding. But I was actually enduring things. And I didn't feel settled in it. You get, you're enduring. I'm enduring these things. But I still don't feel settled, right? That was the thing. Over time, I could feel it. I could feel that I was shrinking to maintain access. I was negotiating my own expansion. I felt that way. I was actually negotiating my own expansion, right? I was, I realized, I realized something uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, that I was letting other people decide my character. I was letting other people decide how I showed up. Mirroring people creates emotional instability. It keeps you in lukewarm situations longer because most of the situations they always lukewarm. They just, inconsistent. It ties your behavior, it tied my own behavior to someone else's inconsistency. I was reacting, I was responding to their inconsistency. My behavior was based on how they showed up. Isn't that funny? It made me constantly reactive. I was always reacting. I was waiting to see how they did before I responded. I was constantly reacting. What changed? I realized something very simple. It was simple, yet uncomfortable. Again, I was letting other people decide my character. I wasn't in charge of my own life. I wasn't in charge of how I showed up. I wasn't in charge of who I wanted to be. Someone else was dictating all of that. I was adjusting who I was, who I am, based on their behavior, how they behaved. And I didn't like that. You unsettled me. I didn't like how I felt. So I made a decision. I decided who I wanted to be before anyone showed up. I decided, who do I want to be? Regardless of how the other person is. So before I was like, I'll meet you where you meet me. But the shift was now became, I already know who I am. And that's how I show up. That's how I act. I act from, I already know who I am. I stopped negotiating my character based on someone else's behavior, you know. And it was big. That was a big deal. Because I realized that losing alignment was worse than losing connection. I was supposed to be focused on alignment. Does this person align with who I am, who I want to become, who I'm trying to be? You know, I was so focused on the connection, not the alignment. I also realized something deeper. If being fully myself cost me a connection, then the connection was conditional on me shrinking. That's not safety. I was quietly doing self abandonment. That's self abandonment. I was abandoning myself. So the growth here wasn't dramatic. It was stable. I used to regulate myself to keep connections. I usually constantly dysregulated. I used to regulate myself, change how I was so I could keep a connection. Now I regulate myself to keep my standards. I focus on who I want to be. These are my standards, and this is how I regulate myself. I regulate myself based on who I want to be, who I am, what my standards are. I started asking, how do I keep this relationship? How do I keep this person? How do I not lose this connection? Then I started asking myself, does this align with who I am? Does this align with who I've decided to be? I decided who I want to be before anybody shows up. When someone shows me who they are, I don't adjust my standards. I don't go meet them where they are. I just adjust my access. Like, I define my standards, and that was it. What does that look like in my life right now? What does that look like in real life? It means I do not match energy anymore. I don't. I don't match your energy. I don't meet you where you meet me. No. I match alignment. Does this person align with who I've decided to be? Does this person align where I'm going? If someone is inconsistent, I don't become inconsistent. If someone is unclear, I don't become vague. I stay who I've decided to be. And the fact is that it feels calmer, it feels safer, less chaos, way less chaos, way less fast. Oh, my nervous system was a wreck. And it became calm because I wasn't, matching energy anymore. And mainly I saw that I became calmer. I realized that was my nervous system telling me that it prefers me leading myself, me choosing who I wanted to be over mirroring. Mirroring wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my for my nervous system. I feel the need to match energy? Why do I feel the need to meet people where they are or where they meet me? I also want you to do one thing, which is stay here with me because I'm going to be sharing more conversations like this. See you next week. Bye.